So, should we start with the question of what even is on-siting?
I guess we're doing it.
All right, anybody want to start us off? What do you personally?
Let's find some things we agree on.
Yeah,
so,
what do you personally think accounts for an on-site?
From the ground without prior knowledge.
Yes.
And I think that second part is the tricky part, because what counts as knowledge is really variable, and so yeah, some maybe reading the guidebook you get information, maybe the chalk on the route is information, maybe the bolts are information, so it's ultimately a question that you have to decide on for yourself. And yeah,
I think at the end of the day, the only person who cares is you. So you get to define what it is. And for me, I really like trying to on-site routes a lot. But there's a lot of things that I wouldn't say count as an on-site. Like, I don't think I can on-site a route after I've belayed somebody on it. And but sometimes I will still try to belay them without gathering knowledge of the route. And I think I might not get a true on-site experience, and I might not be able to count it as an on-site. I think it's certainly great practice for
he just turns his back, you know?
I think ultimately it's about whatever purity you're looking for in an on-site is about the personal experience. The personal experience for me is really about just finding this flow of uncertainty and not having any prior expectation. And I think if you could, whatever it takes for you to do that personally is what an on-site should be defined as.
I'll start because I think I'm the lone disliker of on-siting. So I struggle with headspace and fear of falling, and so on-siting just like naturally puts you in that position. So if I am trying something about a number grade below my project level, then yes, I will try to on-site it. But I rarely have pushed myself past that barrier in the past, and I want to get better at it. So yeah, I'll listen to these gentlemen and learn some tips.
I have a calculated risk strategy, and I've talked to this a little bit in the last few minutes, but I love the uncertainty. I love deciphering the way things flow with the information that I have available, and whether that's no information at all, or deciphering a chalk line, or wondering if the chalk line's been washed out by water in the last 24 hours, or finding new beta on the fly, or walking up to something that I have no idea what the grade is and just seeing this aesthetic line and climbing it and then getting totally shut down. I mean, that's still a really invigorating experience for me. So I think it's about that process of just kind of putting yourself in this moment where what came before and what comes next is really just limited by that next move. And to some extent, after if I attempt an on-site, whether I'm successful or not, I have this kind of odd experience afterward. Like if I'm climbing with someone else and they'll ask me like, oh, I'm trying to do this move, how did you do this move? And I have no memory of it whatsoever, because I'm so in this flow state where nothing really, everything is just happening in the present, and that's the experience I'm going for, and it's a really liberating feeling, and that's what drives me to on-site. I really love it.
You like it? You don't
I
like
personally,
it?
No, I like it. I personally get like red point anxiety. I get way too in my head, especially when I'm close on a project, and it can really bring me down. And on-siting is such I agree with Jeb in that it's a very like intense and demanding and kind of experience, and you have to be very present because you're figuring out everything on the fly. And so for me, when I on-site, I find that I don't really have room to have that kind of anxiety of like, oh, I don't want to blow it, I'm not, or I might not make this move, whatever, because I'm just so wrapped up in like just the next move, or like just eking out a little bit more rest or whatever. And yeah, and I think that the times that I felt the most flowy are maybe when I've on-sited, and maybe I'm not actually, I don't look as if I'm flowing, but my mind is just so wrapped up in what my body is doing that yeah, you're just like one thing. It's really cool.
Really, Honestly, I don't know why I like it. I was trying to think about it as you all were talking about it. I certainly like all of the things that you all mentioned. I love the flow state that you're in. I love being in the moment. I don't know, not kind of problem solving on the fly. You know, that's, I guess, what becomes different about projecting or red pointing a route, is that I'm no longer problem solving on the fly. I'm just executing.
Yeah.
And it's just a much more interesting, engaging experience, I guess. But it's hard to put my finger on exactly why I like it better than trying to red point something. I don't know. Maybe it's just more badass.
That's probably it.
You just on-sighted lying and stealing the other day.
Did.
That's fucking badass.
Margarita Monday, people. Margarita Monday.
So, how'd you do it?
Well, I sat there and looked at it for a while.
I need a refill.
We'll say that. I waited for the right conditions. I'd been to that crag a few times and the bottom was wet, so when I saw that it was dry, it was a nice dry day, I was feeling really good. I was like, okay, today's the day to try it. And I tried to take it really patiently. I milked all the rests I could find, and as I got to each rest, I would try to scoop out the next part of it. Like, okay, this is what I think the sequence is gonna be. And I got lucky and did everything right.
You think that was just luck, though?
I think luck is a big part of on-sighting,
Totally.
because it's really easy to misread a route. I think I've often had this thought, and I've pitched it to many people, that there can be like a separate grading scale for how difficult a route is to on-sight. Like we have the YDS to tell us how hard the route is, but there's also like a scale for like how hard a route is to on-sight.
How cryptic it is.
Right, because a route is much harder to on-sight if there's no chalk on it.
Yeah.
A route is
Too much chocolate.
Too much. Yeah.
Red
You've been
River
to the ride,
Gorge.
you know?
Yeah, exactly. It is either way. And maybe the sequence is easy to read, maybe it's not. Maybe the holds are all easy to see, maybe they're not. Maybe you're dead pointing into a hold that you can't see, it's around a corner or something crazy. That's really hard to on-sight.
Yeah.
Like magnitude over at first buttress. You on-sighted that, right, Tim?
Yeah.
That is an extremely difficult on-site because the sequence and in the crux is super hard to read.
I just got lucky, honestly. Definitely got
So
lucky.
luck is a part of
Yeah.
it, right? So you have to see the move and be like, all right, that's the right thing to do.
Yep.
And hopefully you saw it right, and hopefully you read it right. You know?
Yeah,
And
right.
you don't. That's not always a given.
Yeah, there's probably some science of impulsivity in there that, the same way people make decisions about which toothpaste to buy probably influences it's the same brain process that influences the decision about whether I'm gonna, go for this move or go for that move, or
Right.
I'm gonna follow this line or that line, and it's
Right.
totally a random process, or it's influenced by things that maybe have nothing to do with rock climbing, and so it sometimes could come out appearing like just sheer chance that you read the sequence the right time the first time. But I guess I totally agree that a cryptic moderate can be as hard to on-sight as it is to red point of something that's that you've got dialed that's maybe 2 number grades or 3 number grades harder. I'm not embarrassed to say I've been spit off 5.9
Oh yeah.
multiple times,
Happens.
and just because I can't read the rock, or I get suckered out into some sequence that looks obvious that's not obvious, and it's a sequence of irreversible moves, and I'm done. And you just suck it up and keep going. That doesn't mean it wasn't a great experience. Like, I like to try and fail as much as I like to try and succeed.
The point is trying hard.
Yeah, the excitement for me is always the uncertainty.
Tim, what's your tactic?
I
You
think
just show up, get lucky?
show up and get lucky is definitely rule number 1. But I think I'm gonna agree with John that resting, because resting not only allows you to recover, but it gives you time to think, and that is one of the most important things in on-sighting is like, I mean, maybe, yeah, you can just like climb real fast and like figure it out super fast because you got a big brain. But when you're dumb like me, you gotta take your time and read the sequence while you're resting. But also, like the flip side of that is commitment. So I think that, you know, resting allows you to like lower your heart rate, recover, figure out what you might be able to do. But then commitment is like, doesn't matter if you grab the wrong hold. If it's an irreversible move and you really want to on-sight this thing, just deal with it and keep moving. Because a lot of times when you on-sight, you'll get lucky, but sometimes you won't, and you'll just do the wrong thing. You'll grab the wrong hold, but you can still eke it out if you just keep climbing. And that honestly sometimes feels better when you on-sight something and you have a terrible sequence. Like your beta is terrible, but you still manage to squeak it out.
You're like, oh, I'm strong enough to do it poorly. Imagine what I could do if I knew the beta.
right.
Yeah.
You feel like you got away with something, which is a cool feeling.
Another important skill, I think, is being able to down climb.
Yeah, true.
Sometimes, if you're trying really hard to on-sight something, you might honestly want to down climb.
Yeah.
Because I did that on Line and Stealing the other day. On one of the cruxes, I was at a rest, I tried to lean back really far and get a good look at it, and the sequence was, I thought, going to be one way. I started climbing it, I got like, you know, a couple moves in, and then I was like, wait, this sequence is not going to work. And I down climbed back to the rest, and, you know, got my shit back together, and then adjusted my sequence, you know. So I think knowing when to commit and knowing when to back off if it doesn't feel right.
True.
You know, I think Lynn Hill said that. Like sometimes you got to back off.
Yeah.
And just take a second, and then when you're ready and when it feels right, then go for it.
True.
Yeah. So I have something to add. I feel like for most of us, because we climb outside very often, a lot of like what you're saying, like resting, like knowing when to rest, that I think comes very intuitive to us. Some people, I feel like that might be part of their practice, is looking at a route and identifying at which points on the route do I need to rest, or can I likely get a rest.
Yeah.
Do you think that there are any other like tactics that maybe don't quite come as naturally like to some that you think you probably practice or that you've tried that others could benefit from?
I would say that as someone with a lot of outdoor climbing experience, it just takes a lot of time and a lot of experience to develop this calculated risk headspace to understand not only, and this is really important, I mean, we all want to get the send, but there are times when you really just shouldn't go for it because of the risk issues, right? And that involves everything from, you know, hardware to fall potential to, rock quality and ledges and all the things that can influence risk decisions. And then the counterpoint to that is developing the headspace and understanding when it's okay to take a big fall, trusting the system, trusting your belayer, and being able to just not have that typical semi-committed approach to climbing where you're like, really inside, I really don't expect to send. You know, it's like, I got this, and that goes back to this idea of I don't want to know the grade before I attempt the route, right? Because I don't want to set this preconception of whether or not it's possible for me based on comparing myself with past performance. So a lot of developing that headspace has to do with eliminating that kind of that partial commitment issue where you see that long dead point move and you're like, I'm gonna kind of go for it, but then you just kind of tap it, but you're not really fully committed, and that lack of full commitment is going to take that onside away from you every time.
For resting, I would say follow the chalk. Like wherever there are really chalky holds, you can bet that somebody's been shaking out and tapping into their chalk bag and hanging out there, and that may be above your bolt, or that may be parallel to your bolt, right or left.
Unless you're at the red and there's fucking chalk everywhere.
Yeah, you're screwed if you're at the red. But
Don't go to the red.
no, like just don't rest. My my favorite route at the Obed to climb. It's like my fitness test piece. At the third bolt, you have to move really far right to rest before you can clip it, and you're kind of at this weird horizontal.
What's the route?
It's called Death Blow.
Death blow.
Yeah, it's like angry.
Dude, that
it's
thing is
short.
hard. It's really hard.
I like to see how many times I can do it in a row.
Is that the leftmost of those like 311? Yeah. That thing is sick.
Yeah. So, yeah, just knowing where your rests are, and like for me, following the chalk really helps. So, yeah, helps to read the route.
Yeah, trying to read the route from the ground too, and just like taking your time, just laying down, gazing up at it, you know, deciphering the intricacy.
Maybe visualizing yourself doing the moves.
Do that Adam Ondra stuff.
What about like having a plan?
Nah.
You don't ever have a plan. You just go in. You just go wing it.
in, dude. That's the fun. That's the fun part.
I don't plan well for onsites.
I don't plan too much. I mean, I think what you said about planning rest, I definitely try to look for ledges and low angle areas where I can shake.
Trying to find the hard parts too.
Yeah, and if I see a sequence that looks like it's going to be hard, then I will try to plan it as well as I can, I guess. But sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes it's really easy.
If you have a plan that's a detailed blueprint to construct the entire sequence, that takes away from the.
Is it really a non-story?
Yeah, that takes away, like if that's the mental benefit of the on-site process is evolving all the sequences on the fly.
Yeah.
If you plan it to that amount of detail, I feel like that takes something away. But that's an internal struggle, right? I mean, that's.
And I think you still end up doing it on the fly.
Yeah.
Because then the challenge is usually it doesn't work out.
It doesn't line up. Yeah, it doesn't line up.
So usually the trick is to not stick too close to that plan.
Just grip it and rip it.